Entrepreneurship is an emotional roller coaster. That's because success is not linear. Let's talk about it.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Edgy Entrepreneur podcast. We are season 2 bound here, episode number 16, and this whole premise of this season is about relationships, right? So in this season, we believe that if you really want to be your most influential self in your business, your community, and in your relationships, you must master the art of building the right relationships, right? How do you cultivate relationships? How do you connect with people? And how do people view you and your brand within those relationships, right? So as always, we're your hosts. I'm Daniel Tribby. I am a healthcare entrepreneur and a coaching consultant for private healthcare businesses. And I always have the pleasure of doing this with...
My name is Coach Oriana Guevara. I'm a personal performance coach and certified relationship coach.
Woohoo! Hey, Coach. How are we doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm good. So we have some fun stuff to discuss today, as always. I think I say that at the beginning of every episode for whatever reason. It's always fun. But I think that people have a misconception of what success is. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or how it's defined.
Yeah, most people don't define it.
Right. And I think we talked a little bit about a meme that we've seen recently, right? That is this idea of what people think success looks like as a linear straight line versus what it actually looks like, which is just squiggled, messy road to grandma's house, right? Yeah. And eventually we get there, okay? So we're going to discuss today, right, a little bit about why success is not linear and what that journey is like for you as a person. So today is about that relationship with yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think many people don't feel cut out for entrepreneurship, and that's probably true.
Right.
You know, and if you are in a place where you have a dream and you feel like, you know, you'd like to build something, but you don't feel like you could do it, I don't blame you. Right? You're not wrong in feeling that way. It's because the public school system and the most college programs don't actually prepare us for entrepreneurship. In that, I'm not talking about not preparing you to understand finance or accounting or things like that. I'm saying they don't prepare us for the mindset that is necessary to be successful in entrepreneurship, which probably contributes to the fact that success in entrepreneurship is a big, long, squiggly line that goes all over the place, right?
Yeah, I mean, because what school and college definitely prepare us to become employees, right? Where and an employee environment, depending on the economy, of course, is usually pretty stable and pretty predictable. Right. So I know if I go to work from this time to this time, I get paid this much, and therefore I can afford to buy these things or live this way in this home, have this car, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in the entrepreneurial world, there's a certain level of uncertainty that happens.
Yeah,
right?
and unpredictability. Right. You also tend to feel like a very heavy sense of pressure in that everything relies on you and your ability to perform. Right.
Because at the end of the day, you are the hero to your own story, correct?
That is correct, right?
And so we're going to break down a little bit of this hero's journey and talk about why some of these conflicts, when they come up, people tend to fail. And it usually has to do with the fact that they're programmed a certain way to look for predictable outcomes or to understand what is stable versus being okay with the ebbs and flows and understanding that usually if there's a lag in your business, it usually means there's something in you that needs to change.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. So if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, meaning in your mindset, right? This is what we keep going back to every season and every episode is that your business is a reflection of you. So it comes back to you and your way of thinking, your way of perceiving the world and the environment that you're in. If you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to understand that success isn't linear.
Yep. Definitely not. So, and let's talk about, we're going to use a common just story theme here. There's a lot of people who have written about story and how stories are put together. There's even books out there by people like Donald Miller who have used the art of story and teach you how to do marketing for your business and that kind of stuff. So we're going to explain a little bit of that hero journey or what is involved in the hero's story so you can kind of understand why success isn't linear and what are the roadblocks and how you can kind of transcend over them internally. Okay.
Yeah, I think also part of the hero's journey is that it is a story of triumph, despite having to overcome obstacles and challenges that at some point in time might have made a person or the hero, you,
Right.
feel like this is it. This is the end. I'm a failure, or my business is, going down the drain. Like, this is it. I'm done. Right. The point of the hero's journey is the story of triumph and of overcoming. And so when you open yourself up to the hero's journey, you actually realize that you have a hero's journey story inside of you, right? And that story is probably what's feeding some of your greatest passions and some of your deepest convictions of what drives you to do what you do every single day, whether that be in your business or as as in the role that you play in your family unit, and whatever it might be, right? Like, it's that story in you that got you to the place to where you are now, believing the things you believe now, right?
Absolutely.
And when you start to look for that, you can see that in other people too.
Right. Yeah. And usually heroes are flawed characters, right? We tend to think of heroes big, strong, and, resilient. You look at all the Marvel movies out there right now, but there's usually some underlying conflict. There's something that has to be overcome. Right. Even though these heroes are called, right? Because most of the time that's what it is. You're called to an adventure or to something you feel needs to change, right? So let's apply this idea to business, right? So you were called to start a business for whatever that reason was, because where you work sucked and you didn't agree with the way they did it, so you wanted to do it on your own. Or you saw something that society just had to have, and so you decided to go out and develop it because it would improve a certain community or a certain way of doing things, right? There was something out there that made you say, you know what, I feel called to do this, to deliver it, to build it, to set it up, and it's something that people need, right? That's right. So you're there. You were compelled to change something. Right? So, and it sounds great, right? It sounds like, oh my gosh, we're going to take on the world. We're going to grab everything by the balls and here we go. We're going to take this on. But what actually happens is you run into a laundry list of roadblocks along the way. And those things, those roadblocks or those crises or those difficulties are usually registered three different ways. It's an external struggle, an internal struggle, or a philosophical struggle. Right. Okay? So let's talk first. Let's do external. Yeah. Okay? So external struggles are usually something tangible, something physical. All right? So it could be that, you need a new space to record your podcast studio in, but you can't find one. That's an external, tangible thing that you need to find, right? So what else is external, Coach? What are things that come up that could be external roadblocks in crisis mode?
Yeah, it's anything that you can see. Feel, and touch. It's the thing that you're observing outside of yourself that is the problem, right? Those people on your team that you hired, right? Those suppliers, that bank, right? Whatever that is outside of yourself that you're going, this is creating, or you are creating a problem for me, right? And you're observing that to be outside of yourself.
Yep. External, tangible, physical issues. Internal is more of those limiting beliefs that come about, right? We try to do something and it doesn't work. We try new marketing, it doesn't happen. We can't close a sale. We can't get people in our door. And so we start to think to ourselves, is it me? Do I suck at this? Like self-doubt starts to creep in, right? So what happens to us in those internal struggle moments?
Yeah, I mean, you start to engage in not only the negative thoughts, but the negative self-talk. And one thing you have to realize is that all of that comes from what are called limiting beliefs or disempowering belief systems, right? So I would never think to myself, maybe this isn't the path for me, if there wasn't some type of doubt already in my belief system that was telling me, maybe you're not capable of actually answering this calling on your life. Right. So because I would carry around a disempowering belief, then you end up thinking those thoughts, then you end up saying those things to yourself, and you're more likely to then manifest, in that internal struggle, you're more likely to manifest more external struggles too.
Exactly. And this is where you hear people talk about the entrepreneurial roller coaster, because this is what it is. All right. It has nothing to do with the external problem, which may be I have enough money, I don't have enough money, or I hired the right people, I didn't hire the right people. That's the external problem. But the internal problem is actually the roller coaster, right? It's 1 month, we made $25,000 this month, woo! And then the next month you're like, I made $200, what do I do? And like there's this idea that now I'm not good enough, right? 1 month I'm great, the next month I suck. 1 month I great, the next month I suck. And there's this continuous up and down, and not to put mental health on display, but I like to use the term that being an entrepreneur can be the most bipolar relationship with yourself. Right. And again, that's not to put anybody down as mental health issues. It's just to simply tell you that the roller coaster has very, very high highs and very, very low lows.
Yeah,
right?
Especially in the beginning.
Yep.
Especially in the beginning. And so if you go into entrepreneurship, again, because the system doesn't educate you about what it's going to be like and doesn't properly set your expectations. And so if you haven't surrounded yourself with people, let's say you didn't have parents who had their own business, you didn't grow up around other people who were engaged in this lifestyle, right? I'm going to say it because entrepreneurship is a lifestyle. And you haven't seen that as an adult, and then you're feeling, called to this mission to start your own business, serving people in a really impactful way, with no expectation about the emotional roller coaster that you're about to hit yourself onto, you can really trigger some self-doubts in those moments and go, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe this is proof that I should be doing something else, or that I need to go back into the employment arena and not be doing, not trying to venture out on my own.
Right. Yeah, very true. So those are your external and internal struggles. And the last one is your philosophical struggle, right? Which philosophical struggles usually have to do with your why, right? So why did we develop the Shop app? Well, it was because people needed a single place to go to track their goods after they bought them, right? Why did I join with my partner on this regenerative medicine practice? It's because we believed that people deserved better outcomes than surgery and pain medicine were getting them, right? Why did we do this Edgy Entrepreneur podcast? Because entrepreneurs need a place to go to learn how to create better relationships, right? Or to have better mindset, right? There's a why, a philosophical why. And usually that philosophical why is the thing that keeps you aligned with your vision. And as soon as you have a lapse in that, we're doing something that doesn't really connect with why we started this business. Now you have a philosophical problem, right? And those a lot of times can make you go, well, how did we get here, right?
Yeah. These kind of show up as a Trojan horse, right? Like they look amazing when you first find them, but then once you're in it, like you're invested, you're in it, you've invested time, energy, resources, etc. Then you realize like, that probably wasn't a good idea, or this wasn't the outcome that we wanted, or this led us in a completely different path and direction than our mission. Why are we doing this? And so these are actually, they're kind of like landmines. A lot of people step on these without even realizing that they stepped on them until they're pretty far into it. They've already essentially until you've been hurt, and you've really got to get back to what I call home, which is why.
Right. The
get
vision
back to
that
why.
you had, right?
Yeah, get back to your mission, your vision. What is the impact that you wanted to make, and how did you end up along a path that was leading you to a different place of impact, meaning off and out of alignment from where you intended to get, right? That's a philosophical question that is worth asking yourself. How did we get here, right? Like that's a really deep question, even though it sounds simple, because if you don't figure out how you got so far off track, you're bound to make the same mistake again.
Right.
And this actually happens very frequently with entrepreneurs, where you start to doubt your mission, right? You start to doubt the journey you're on, and you start to think, maybe I should be doing something else, or, maybe I should just at least look at it. Or something else shows up, right? Because for most intelligent people, there is no shortage of opportunity. So you see an opportunity show up, I can make money doing that. And then you go totally off of your path maybe with very good intentions, thinking you'll come back home as soon as you can. And then you find yourself, who knows, weeks, months, maybe years out in outer space doing something else that you never really intended.
Right.
Because it's creating money for you, but you're far, far away from your mission. And because of that, you feel really unfulfilled.
Yeah. For the purposes of what we're going to talk about in this episode, right, in the entrepreneur roller coaster and why success isn't linear, it's these two areas of difficulties or problems, philosophical and internal, right? External shit's going to happen all the time.
Yeah.
Right? It's your ability to negotiate how you feel about it inside that it makes a difference between success and failure.
Right.
Right. And I'm not here, and we're not here to say that failure is necessarily bad, because it's not. It's a great learning moment if you are able to understand that it's a learning moment and that you can make a pivot in those moments. Right.
Right.
So we're gonna talk a little bit about those problems and how you deal with them. But to complete our hero's journey, right? Our hero, we've already established, is a flawed person. They have these certain amount of struggles, and they're usually aided by what we call a guide. Okay, so if this woman across from me has never seen Star Wars. I'm putting that out here because when we were playing this episode, I brought it up, and she was like, "I don't know what that means." But
yep, it's true.
If you haven't seen Star Wars, you're not going to understand this, but you should understand this if you've seen Star Wars. So Luke Skywalker is your hero in that story, right? But Luke Skywalker's a very conflicted person, right? A lot of that's because of his father being the dark side and him being part of the Jedi, right? But the other side of that coin is that he doesn't make a decision to go dark or stay good just by himself. He has a guide. That guide's name is Yoda, okay? So Yoda is there to show him that direction, and usually most of us as entrepreneurs need a guide, correct?
Yes, you need a guide outside of those little voices on your shoulder.
Yes, an actual guy, a person.
A person. Typically, yes, that's going to be a person. That's your, the voice of your conscience and your intuition trying to lead you toward the way, right? And you can make a decision on whether or not you want to follow that, or whether or not you want to follow the monkey mind. We have these little kind of caricatures like angel and devil on one shoulder and versus the other, but that's your conscience and your monkey mind, right? Because the decisions, the choices, the perception that you're going to engage in when you look at the world from the lens of fight or flight, which is when your monkey mind is engaged, right, and active, meaning you've been hijacked, that's a totally different perspective. That's a completely different decision about the same exact issue that you would make if you were in your acting from your gut, your higher level consciousness, and your intuition.
Right. And also keep in mind that this guide, right, is a stronger character typically than the hero, okay? And they have been where you want to go.
Yes.
All right. So they have accomplished the thing that you want to accomplish, which means they have real world knowledge. All right. The other side of this hero thing is that we sometimes listen to people who we perceive to be heroes and know something about a field that they know absolutely nothing about. All right, I'm going to say that again. Some of us use people in our lives who are personal heroes for us, but have zero idea about the business that we're running. And so we listen to them, even though they have no idea what the hell is going on inside that business. So
they might have very good intentions, but if they haven't done the thing that you aspire to do, and they haven't gotten the results that you aspire to acquire, they're not going to be the best guide for you. They can guide you in other things. This is where I talk to people about putting together a personal board of directors, right? These are different people who can support you on different aspects. You don't go to all of them for everything. You go to the ones that are qualified to support you on certain things when that certain thing comes up for you.
Exactly.
Right? So, if let's say, you might have a very close, trusting, loving relationship with a parent, but if that parent doesn't know anything about building a business, that's probably not the guide you should choose for business building questions and support.
Exactly.
That's what we're saying. So you have to use some discernment there. It doesn't mean you don't care or love that person if you didn't go to them for support during this specific crisis. It just means that you need to get support from somebody who's, one, qualified to give you that support, and two, has the capacity to give it when you need it.
Right. And if you want your squiggly success line to get even more squigglier, keep doing this without the right people in your corner. And that's what you're going to create for yourself.
Or trying to do it alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So, and then, these particular internal and philosophical crises, right, are growing moments for us. Right? We have to have these in order for us to make a change that's necessary for us to take the next step towards success.
Yeah, that's and that in and of itself is where you become the hero, right? Is in moving toward that challenge, right? Not allowing that obstacle to, cause you to go backwards and regress, but facing that obstacle and becoming creative and resourceful and finding a way to either remove the obstacle or get around it, right? In that experience of that difficulty and that needing to stretch yourself, you grow. And that is the whole point of the hero's journey. Mm-hmm. When you're doing that thing, right, you become a better business person, right? Like and this is a mindset that's very common to athletes, right? Like every time you go out there as an athlete and you do the thing, you practice for for perfecting your craft in a sport. It doesn't matter as much how you performed as the fact that you got out there. You got on the road and you got in the gym, you got on your mat, right? You did the thing. And even if it wasn't, level 10 performance while you were out there the entire time doing the thing, just the fact that you crossed the start line makes you a better person, makes you a better athlete, right? Just the fact that you faced that obstacle, right, with the intention of overcoming it, rather than seeing the obstacle as proof of that you're a failure, seeing the obstacle as an opportunity to learn and grow and overcome a challenge, right, and maybe take some people along with you in that growth process, that makes you a better business person. That makes you a hero. Once
you conquer the internal or the philosophical struggle once, guess what's waiting for you again?
More.
So I want you to picture this for a second. If you're watching, you might be able to actually draw this. But if you're just listening to this, picture this in your mind. Draw yourself a circle and put a dot in the middle. That dot is you. Right? And then stay inside the circle and picture another one or two dots. Those are your problems inside your circle. All right? The circle represents your ability to deal with those problems. Okay? Those problems are inside your circle. They're in your ability to deal with them. You can handle them. No big deal. But now picture a dot that's outside that first circle. Now what do you have to do? You have to expand yourself in a way that allows you to conquer new problems. Yeah. So now you draw a bigger circle to encompass that next point. But then what else happens? Another problem happens outside that circle. It's a continuous growth thing. You have to continue to increase your sphere of knowledge and tolerance for these types of things, right? There's a reason there's 16 and a half Rocky movies, right? Because there's always a new person to fight, but there's also an internal struggle that he fights in those movies too, right? There's the fight in the ring, but then there's also the fight of his own mind. Is he good enough? Can he transcend and be as good as he was, if not better, right? His wife gets cancer and dies. He has kids, right? There's all these different problems that occur that are both internal and philosophical, not to mention the external thing that he just has to have. He just has to show up and fight. So this will continue to be your life also. And if you don't continue to grow and stretch with these problems, failure is going to be inevitable for you.
And that's the thing. Once you start to define success using this new, different definition, meaning, a really deep understanding that success isn't linear, meaning on the road to success, there are obstacles. There are things that you're going to have to move around. You're going to have to go in a U-turn to go around. You're going to have to take 2 steps, forward just to take 1 step backward, et cetera, right? Like it's not linear, but you keep progressing. And when you understand that inherently changes your definition of failure. Because now failure becomes not progressing, seeing the obstacle, seeing the challenge, and not confronting it, right? Not moving through it, but not moving through it because you choose not to move through it. You choose to not even attempt, right? You choose not to get into the gym. You choose not to cross the start line, whatever it is, right? Like that's the failure now, right?
Right.
On your road on this hero's journey, right? As long as you're progressing, you're in it, right? This is the whole thing. You got to stay in the game,
Right.
Stay in the game and adjust your expectations, because you cannot expect that you're going to be able to make progress when you're sitting on the sideline.
Mm-hmm.
That just doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way with anything in life, But a lot of people, they want this road to success to be easy. And if it's not, right, as soon as an obstacle comes up, or one that triggers your own internal dialogue to say, like, this is too big for me to overcome, as soon as that particular obstacle comes up, then we feel like, recouping to make progress, or recovering, or getting healthy, or doing something so that I can progress through this obstacle that's bigger than anything I've ever encountered before. Now all of a sudden, I'm failing.
Right.
And we get really down on ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, what helps a lot of people, and I do this with a lot of my clients, is I ask them, I'm like, okay, well, what would your life look like if you don't correct this problem? Mm-hmm. Have a picture that. Like, what does your life look like? How does it turn up? Right?
Yeah, it's some combination of more of the same until it's getting progressively worse.
Okay. So then what does your life now look like if you transcend the problem? Mm-hmm. What does your life look like if you take the necessary steps, learn the things you need to learn, and move beyond it?
Right.
And you create that picture, and a lot of times it's like, okay, well, I guess I need to choose my hard, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a big theme of this whole thing, is choosing your hard.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So do you want the easy way out, which actually is not easier, it's harder, because you keep getting more of the same, inviting more of the same in your life? Or do you choose to take the road less traveled, right? Which is usually the harder road, but I would much rather suffer for a short time to have maximum gains, to suffer for a long time and have minimum gains.
Yeah, I think most people, because they don't see how much better things can be for them if they made the degree of effort necessary to overcome the challenge at hand.
Right.
Then it's like, well, the situation I'm in, I guess I can tolerate it. I guess it's not that bad. What you really got to consider is, like, if the situation that you were in is not only something you could overcome, but even if your circumstances became 10% better than they are now. That means you overcame the problem, right? So the challenge is gone, and also your life is 10% better. Wouldn't that be worth the effort?
Yeah.
Versus staying where you're at with the challenge straight right there, right?
10%, I don't know. I don't know.
So now I have the problem, and I still have the challenge, the obstacle in front of me, right? And I didn't overcome it, still there. And my life is still what it is, right? Just more of the same status quo.
Right.
That many oftentimes, like, is what leads a person to come and talk to a coach, right? But then they get entrenched in this mindset, right? I don't know if making the effort's going to be worth it. Well, then you must not value overcoming that challenge. You must be totally fine in the situation you're in.
Oops.
You must actually value that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk about values all the time. You guys have listened to this, for the last 2 seasons. Values shows up everywhere. And when people say, no, I value hard work, but you sleep in, right?
Yeah, their habits show a completely different picture.
Netflix at 7 p.m. Come on, you don't value hard work. You don't value what you actually want to be able to be successful. You don't value that shit. Yeah. What you value is being lazy as fuck and hoping that somebody else is going to do the shit for you. That's what you actually value, right? And people just don't connect those dots, together. But it's so much easier if you just fix it for me. I don't want to do it. It's hard.
This is where, the hero's journey is such a beautiful story, because it gives you the opportunity to see that person in yourself. It's very easy to look out and go like, oh yeah, that person overcame this, that, and the other. Like, I have a friend who survived cancer. Like, and she's in her, early to mid 30s now, and she's a cancer survivor. Like, holy shit, right? Like, what this woman has gone through and overcome as of this point in time is so incredibly inspiring. It's so easy to look out and be like, yeah, but she did it because she's her, because that's them, because they can do it. I wouldn't be able to overcome a challenge like that, right? And so we put people on a pedestal, and we make ourselves and our capabilities small, when you really take the moment to understand the hero's journey, you can see that you've actually been through these journeys multiple times in your life. This is cyclical, you know. Your entire life experience isn't just like one journey. You know, you're going on these journeys constantly. If you really look back in your life, you've been overcoming major life circumstances and possibly even crisis many times, you know. And as bad as it feels to be in those situations, give yourself the opportunity to come out of them and reflect back in thanks and in gratitude for how you showed up that led to your ability to get out of those circumstances. You know,
it's kind of like the must be nice situation, right? That you were talking about. Well, they did that because they're them. They overcame because that's who they are. Yeah. It's no different than somebody looking at a successful person and saying, "Well, it must be nice to have that car, right? Must be nice to win 7 Super Bowls. Must be nice to have that
a successful business.
Must be nice." Bitch, nobody was saying it must be nice when I was eating out of my car, right? or sleeping in weird hotel rooms, or like nobody was saying it must be nice then.
Yeah.
Right? We all want to see the glacier, the top of it, and not realize that 90% of what's actually there is under the water, right? And so if you are not resilient enough, and if you don't understand that success is not linear, right, then you're going to be one of those must be nice people.
Yeah, and you'll be sitting in your pain points going, you know, successes for other people that are not like me, right? You know, that's the thing. You know, the hero is constantly, listen to that word, constantly challenged to grow and overcome or to perish.
Right. Absolutely.
Constantly. And that's literally the journey that we're faced with, not only as a whole in our lifetime, but through various different stages in our lifetimes, through various different opportunities and experiences, and literally every single day, right? Like, every day you wake up, am I going to be the hero in my life today?
Right.
Or not?
It's a powerful question to ask yourself, though.
Yeah.
Right? Or here's a better one. How am I going to be the hero of my business today?
Yeah.
Right? Or even deeper than that, the people you serve are the heroes to your business. You're the guide.
Yeah.
If you want to go even deeper than that.
Yeah.
There are people who are counting on you to help them be the hero in their story through whatever business it is that you're providing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Are you going to sit back and struggle with your problems and decide that those people aren't worth your effort?
Ooh.
Girl, stop. Okay? You got into business because you had a calling. We said this at the beginning. You got into business because you had a calling to change an industry, a community, whatever it might be. Okay? So if you end up with a roadblock that produces some internal struggle or philosophical struggle for you, and you don't take that struggle on, you're telling everybody who you committed to helping that you don't have what it takes to help them anymore.
You know, this is something to grapple with within yourself, right? We get so caught up in, like, you know, especially when you're like in mission driven and impact driven business, right? Particularly service providers, right? Like, what you sell, what you provide is you, you know, your service, the way you do it, and like the ethos that comes out of you when you provide that service, when you talk about that thing. And so it requires you to really put yourself out there in terms of your beliefs, your identity, your, you know, whole image, you know, like, this is who I am and this is what I believe. And you're putting yourself out there to be both welcomed and accepted and crushed and rejected by society as a whole, right? In terms of who needs you and wants to hear that message and can benefit from it, and who doesn't recognize that they would need you or want to hear that message, right? And so that's a very vulnerable position to be yourself in,
right?
To put yourself in. And at the same time, for as long as you resist and struggle with yourself on putting yourself really on in your stand and showing up in the world that way, then what you're doing is you're leaving people out there to struggle and suffer on their own.
Yep.
You know, so you know, if you are in business such as coaching or service providing, and you're doing that because you want to solve a pain point, you know, a significant pain point for other people out there, The moment that you decide that you're too shy, you're too scared to put yourself out there in that vulnerable place, you're choosing to let the people you serve suffer.
Mm-hmm. You're choosing to not show up as the guide for their story. Right. This is exactly how this hero's journey shows up in your business. Right. And we're such a programmed species to put other people's needs first. Right. Like, oh, I want to help you get through your problem. I want to help. But when it comes down to my problem, I don't want no help, or I'm not going to help myself, or I'm afraid to ask for help because I might look weak by doing so. Mm-hmm. And that is a problem. You can't be the guide in somebody else's story through your business, right? Your business is potentially the guide to help the hero of somebody's story.
Right.
But you don't get to be the guide in somebody else's story if you're not being the hero of your own.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. You knock yourself out of integrity. Mm-hmm. Granted, there are many people who are actually doing that. Right? They're claiming that they can support you to get outcomes and goals and results that they've never actually produced for themselves in their own business. And, this is why you have to do your due diligence before you buy services from anybody, or you really engage with people who would be pouring into you, right. And know exactly what you're getting and who you're dealing with, and know that their energy and their philosophy is pure. But, this is where you start to kind of see the domino effect, if you will, or the ripple, whereas you can't give something that you're not willing to receive from someone else, right? So if you're in a position where you're like, well, yeah, I can create that outcome for people, I hope it's because you've created that outcome for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had these smart people who've asked me to coach them. They have asked the question of me, like, why do you feel like you're qualified to teach me this stuff, or to coach me, or to consult my business?
That's a great question.
That's a great question. Some people were offended by that. Well, if you don't want me to work with you, you could just say so, because fuck that. People like, I'll ask this question. Like, I've asked my coach myself, hey, well, why do you think you could help me? And what people tend to do is answer the question with all of the stuff that they've actually accomplished, mm-hmm. which I don't give two shits about. I care more about how you've transcended the failures, mm-hmm. right? Tell me about the times you fell on your face and what did you do at that point? And I do the same thing when people ask me that question. Why do you think I'm qualified to coach you? Or why do you think you're qualified to coach me? And I say, well, honestly, because I failed at it 100 times before I succeeded at it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
I've learned all of the things that made me question all of the things about myself. Mm-hmm. And I had to figure out how to work through those things. I had to have coaches myself and guides myself to help me understand before I could put together the 7-figure medical practice.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I'm qualified.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that. What I want people to realize out of that story is how, transcending the crisis in your own hero's journey will humble the hell out of you. That's the only reason that you could have a conversation with somebody where you admit, the reason that I know how to do this well is because I screwed it up, mm-hmm. Maybe more than one occasion. Right. And I was able to still make a comeback and, redeem myself from these giant screw ups, and that humbles the hell out of you. Mm-hmm. You have to be humble to be able to admit that in your business, And so a person who is being genuine and authentic in their need to transcend and overcome their own crisis, and knowing that it was they themselves that led them into the place that they're at right now, mm-hmm. right, has also had to humble the hell out of themselves, right? And so when those two collide, you recognize, like, you're in the place where I am now, help me get out of it, right? I was in where you are now. Mm-hmm. I can help you get out of it. And when that's a genuine and honest expression, then that connection makes so much sense, Right. Whereas, right now, kind of what's permeating the coaching industry is a lot of people who've never gotten those results. Right. And so they don't have to humble themselves. Right. And they don't have to acknowledge, hey, I screwed it up, but I made a comeback. Right. Yeah. They're not there, because they never actually have walked the path that you're trying to walk. Mm-hmm. And so it's important, I think for me, I was always, when it came to relationship coaching, and especially when I was really, really new in my coaching practice, people were like, relationship coach, does that mean that all of your relationships are perfect? And I was like,
no,
actually,
not.
It took me aback the first time somebody said that to me. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. And I actually responded to them. I said, no, it means I've screwed them up a lot. And that's why I'm qualified to have these conversations, right? I've screwed them up and I've come back from that. I've screwed them up and I've been able to engage in relationship repair. I've been able to redeem myself by looking at myself, right? And my contributions to that screw up.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they're not there and they won't do that. This is part of that philosophical personal crisis.
Yeah, it's like what does Brene Brown say? Like, I don't want to hear from you unless you've been in the ring getting your ass kicked too.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm the same way. Like, if you haven't had to call your mother to borrow money to make payroll, you ain't struggled, homie. I have. That's happened to me. That has happened to me, right? Early on in the business venture, we were looking at the paycheck going, or looking at the bankrolls going, we haven't had insurance checks clear and that kind of stuff happen. Like, what are we going to do? Like, we gotta pay people in 2 days. And I don't come from money now. Like, my grandparents were bricklayers. They did, my grandfather had a bricklaying company with his brothers, right? And that was the only entrepreneurial anything that I knew about, but they didn't talk about it. It wasn't common dinner table or Sunday afternoon, like car riding chats. My mom worked for the government, she was an employee. So we didn't come from large amounts of money or beach houses, lake houses, and boats. I didn't come from any of that. So it's not like I called my rich uncle and was like, hey bro, can I hold 20 grand? Like, that doesn't happen in my world.
Yeah.
Right? It was a very humbling situation to have to call my mother to say, hey, can I borrow some coins so I can pay my people? I'll get it back to you ASAP. And of course I did within a couple weeks, like those checks cleared and we got that revenue back in, but that's a scary moment. So if you haven't ever experienced that and you haven't looked at that bank account and had to swallow both pair of nuts back down and call and humble yourself like that, I don't want to hear from you, bro. I just don't. I want to hear from you. Yeah.
I think, in that moment where you go, oh no, right? Like, we just hit this giant iceberg of an obstacle, right? Like, in that moment, it's so easy to get triggered and fall into scarcity. I'm not meant for this. I'm an imposter. I'm not cut out for this. I don't, again, your mind gets hijacked and you get into fight or flight and you're operating from the reptilian brain at that point. You can't see any of your resources or options. All you can see is, I'm going to end up homeless under a bridge.
Right. Nobody loves me.
And if that sounds funny, you would be surprised how common that is. Like, I have clients I talk to and they're like gainfully employed. They have savings. They're intelligent people. If they lost their job today, they could probably have another one within days, 48 hours later. And like, the first thing that they, in that triggered state is like, from gainfully employed with my own home to homeless under a bridge. Like, that gap is this big.
Right.
For them, when you're triggered. When you're not triggered and you're seeing clearly, then you're like, oh no, like, I have all kinds of levels of support and options, and like, shit, I do not want to have to go to my parent to ask for, financial support temporarily, but it's there.
Right.
You can,
right,
if you need to, if you're under that dire circumstance, right? You can pull that ripcord on your parachute before you crash and burn.
Right.
And like, if the options are between getting evicted and ending up homeless under a bridge and calling, swallowing your pride and calling somebody who you don't want to have to ask for money to help you, like, what are you going to choose? Seriously. What would...
The majority of people would want the bridge, right? Right.
Well, when you're triggered, right? But let me see you under that bridge and not wishing you had made that phone call, right? Like, that's some BS. Don't lie to me like that. Like, you need to make the call,
right? And the thing is that what you learn from having to call your mom to ask for that money is that, hey, I can't do this. Like, this is not the way I want to run a business, my life. I don't want that stress.
Right.
Every payroll.
Right. I can't do it this way.
Right. Therefore, I need to change myself.
Right.
Right. I need to change this internal problem that I have via courses, reading books, hiring a coach, somebody, somewhere who can guide me on how to avoid this from happening.
Correct.
Right?
So I never experience this again. Right.
This is the proper step into your next level, which is required for success. And the next level, there will always be another level. There will always be another level and another level and another level. If you've heard Matthew McConaughey's acceptance speech, I think it was for the Oscar, and he said, my hero is me 10 years from now, right? It's the next level of myself. What can I grow to? What can I overcome? Who do I need to become?
Yeah.
And that is the question that most people do not answer in their success journey. Who do I need to become? Closely followed by who or what's going to help me get there.
Right. And that's where the commitment needs to come in, right? Commit to becoming that person. You know, usually, because I'm in the relationship space, I often talk to people who say that, they think that they have a problem with commitment. Your only problem with commitment is that you've never made one that was meaningful for you. You never found something that was meaningful enough for you to commit to. And if you've never found something that's meaningful enough for you to make a commitment to, then you've never met yourself. You've never met yourself, and you've never met what you're capable of, and you have no idea how worthy you are of committing to, right? Because once you make that commitment to yourself, you can get the business that you want, you can get the finances that you want, you can get the partner that you want, you can get the health and wellness that you want, you can get, the spiritual connectedness and all of the experiences in the world that you want. Like, commit to one thing. You.
And so here's the question. Can you actually get off the entrepreneurial roller coaster? As we close this episode out, can you actually get off the entrepreneurial roller coaster?
I mean, I think the dips in hills and valleys get like a little probably shallower. Yeah, a little easier.
Right.
I also think that over time you start to enjoy it. You start to enjoy some hills and valleys, right? You start to think to yourself like, okay, I see you, obstacle. Like, I got this, I'm going to overcome this. And you start to get a sense of pride and joy from the opportunity to overcome that obstacle, So, it's a little smoother, a little easier, a little more enjoyable, despite the fact that they exist. But do they go away? No.
They never do. That's absolutely correct. I'm too Southern not to throw this in here, but we go from mountains and valleys to hills and hollers. That's what we call them things, hills and hollers. All right. So you actually, yes, you develop some tolerance to be able to understand that problems are now opportunities, opportunities for growth, versus problems are things that stop me from getting what I want. Right. So beautifully said. So thank you guys all for joining us on this episode. I hope you guys have gotten some internal insight of some of your philosophical and internal struggles and how they may have given you roadblocks to which you could have plowed through, but you chose to stay where you were and not transcend past them. Right. And in the future, when you get to those moments, you'll call upon mentors and you'll humble yourself enough to find people who can help you, because there are a group of people waiting for you to show up in your business who need what you have to deliver.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. If you've enjoyed this episode, please write a review and rate it. We would love that, because that will help us tremendously to be able to reach more people just like you who are enjoying the podcast and can receive a lot from these messages. We would also appreciate it if you would join our Edgy Entrepreneur community on Facebook. If you text the word Edgy, EDGY, to 33777, you'll receive a link where you can join the community and you can be part of online live events and be the first to know when we drop new episodes of the podcast.
Sounds great. Take care, everyone. We'll talk to you guys again soon.